800-923. What do you have to lose? Call 800-923-6829. Again, 800-923-6829.
Live from the heart of SEC country, this is your daily fix of grit, guts, and gridiron glory. Welcome to the Deep South College Football Show.
Bowen, here he goes! Georgia retakes the lead!
Breaking down the biggest matchups, the boldest takes, and the deepest rivalries in college football on Tide 100.9 and 1230 AM WTBC.
Intercepted! They confused him! Xavier Brown headed the other way! Touchdown Tide!
From Fayetteville to Gainesville, from the Grove to Toomer's Corner, it's SEC football.
Delivers! Touchdown!
Now, here's your award-winning host, Wyatt Fulton.
Welcome into the Monday edition of the Deep South College Football Show right here on Tide 100.9 and 1230 AM WTBC, your home for Alabama Crimson Tide sports. It became a conversation over the weekend. What is, I guess, the reason for the SEC not competing for a national championship over the last 3 seasons, right? Is it injuries? Is it just the Big Ten got better? Is the talent at the Big Ten any better than the SEC? Is it the fact that the SEC has, gone through a grind of a schedule, right? The grind of an SEC schedule. We hear about it. We talk about it all the time, how tough it is to play in the SEC when you look at teams like Georgia, Alabama, Oklahoma, Texas, competing for a lot of those playoff spots here that the SEC is trying to fill with their premier teams. So we'll talk about that today here on the program. Welcome into the Deep South College Football Show. If you're new here, thank you so much for watching and listening. We talk college football 1 hour a day, 5 days a week, 52 weeks out of the year here, talking all about the SEC, talking all about college football as a whole. So if you're new to the program, again, we appreciate you. Please leave a like, subscribe, comment. If you jump in the live chat there, leave your comments. We'll talk about them here on the air. Hanging out here in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. That's where we are based on Tide 100.9. But again, we've got the show over on YouTube, the Tide 100.9 Facebook page. We appreciate everybody who tunes in via those methods, as well as the X account over there at FultonW_ on Twitter. So we greatly appreciate everybody who tunes in, watches, listens via all of our different distribution models here for the Deep South College Football Show. Hanging out in the studio, we got Jackson O'Brien with us. Jackson, how you doing, man?
I'm doing well. Can't complain. It's very hot outside, very humid.
It is. We are fully into the summer weather here in the Southeast. And speaking of the Southeast here, the Southeastern Conference has not won a national championship since Georgia put belt to backside on TCU in 2022. The SEC has not been back to the national championship game since Georgia TCU in that 2022 season here. So looking at it here, what is the reason that the SEC has not been back to the national championship game, right? I don't know that it's this big, NIL killed the SEC, the transfer portal killed the SEC or anything like that, right? Because, quote unquote, they can't stockpile top talent anymore. Well, okay, the SEC was known for having elite level talent there, yes, but at the same time, we know that that's not really the case, right? Because the SEC still has premier teams, premier talent, premier guys across the sport, right? When you look at, go ahead, Jackson.
They just continued their streak of having the most overall NFL draft picks in this past draft. So that's not
broke their own record for most draft picks in a single NFL draft. So we know the talent's still there in the SEC. Hey, JT Talking Bama, we appreciate you guys for tuning in here. Check them out, Talking Bama as well. They do a really good job over there. By the fans, for the fans. That is JT and the crew over there at Talking Bama. So we appreciate you guys for jumping in and listening with us here today. The SEC broke their own record for number of draft picks in this past NFL draft. Now, I will say, the Big Ten, for the first time in 15 years, unseeded the SEC at the top. And what we mean by that is the Big Ten had more first-round picks than the SEC did in April's NFL draft. So it kind of continues to allude to the fact that, hey, maybe the SEC is deeper, is better overall than the Big Ten is. But, again, shout out JT and Talking Bama there. Maybe the SEC is deeper, but it seems like the talent at the Big Ten is more top heavy, if that makes any sense, right?
Absolutely. For me, it's very similar to when the SEC was still in the East and the West.
Right.
And you had Georgia, basically the only team in the East, and they played that entire East schedule. What that allowed you to do was kind of go through and, get out on the other side by the end of the year unscathed and still, work out some kinks in the middle of the year. That way, when you're going into the playoffs, you're fully healthy and ready to go. And that's what a main Big Ten schedule is. You're playing Rutgers, you're playing Maryland, you're playing Michigan State, Iowa, Northwestern. I mean, the list goes on and on. So that's what it really is. It's are the teams at the top still very good? Yes, absolutely. But when you're playing now this SEC schedule that's not any longer the East and West, you're playing the best teams across the conference. It makes it harder.
Yeah, and I mean, going back to that SEC East analogy there, you're absolutely right. I mean, if you think about the 2010s SEC East, it's Missouri, who had a good couple of years, right? 2013, 2014, they were okay, making the SEC championship game as new members of the conference. But outside of that, Florida dominated much of those 2010s years. Well, Georgia was down, right? Georgia was kind of transitioning from Mark Richt to Kirby Smart during the middle of that era. We now know what Kirby Smart can do at Georgia. We've seen it a couple of times, but Tennessee was in the middle of their kind of rough stretch with Butch Jones leading the charge and the Jeremy Pruitt coming in as well. Vanderbilt was still the laughingstock of the conference. Kentucky was talking about basketball in August and not, the upcoming football season, right? And so that's the majority of the teams that they were facing in that SEC East, right? It's Kentucky, it's Vanderbilt, it's Tennessee when they were in their down years. It was Georgia during the transition from Rick to Smart there. So the Big Ten isn't as deep. We looked at the SP Plus there from ESPN's Bo Conley, and while the Big Ten's top three are better than the SEC's top three, that's Ohio State, Oregon, and Indiana, two teams who have won a national championship. Oregon's made the college football playoff the last two seasons after going undefeated in 24, and then unfortunately for Oregon, losing to Indiana in the 2025 season there. So the top three are better in the Big Ten. But after that, the SEC is so much deeper, and according to the SP Plus model there from ESPN's Bill Conley, which does take into account returning production, strength of schedule, strength of record, even though that's not something that we're really talking about yet because no games have been played. Returning production, incoming talent, coordinator turnover, coaching changes, and things like that. So I feel like the SP Plus from ESPN's Bill Conley is probably one of the better models to go on when you look at kind of preseason, right? Because that's what we're in. It's May 11th here, so we are still in the preseason aspect of it. The top of the Big Ten might be better. Oregon, Ohio State, Indiana. I mean, first overall pick, Fernando Mendoza. Ohio State just had, 4 top 11 picks. Carnell Tate, Arvell Reese, Sonny Styles, Caleb Downs there. Probably should have had another first rounder in Kareem McDonald, but he ended up going in the second round to the Houston Texans in the NFL draft this past April here. But the SEC, again, is probably a bit of a deeper conference, right? We've compared and contrasted certain teams, right? Arkansas and Purdue finished with the same record last season, 2-10 apiece. And yet Arkansas is a top 25 team in talent composite, whereas Purdue's outside of the top 30. So even though they may be the bottom feeders of their conference, they may not quite be. You're not what your record says you are, right? And that's the big thing in college football. In the NFL, you kind of are what your record says you are, right? The talent level is very, very similar. You're playing with the top 1% of college football athletes across all 32 teams. But in college, that's a little bit different. That may not necessarily be the case because, yes, Alabama, Georgia, they can stockpile a lot of that top talent even in the modern era with the transfer portal and with NIL. But Jared Curtis would have gone to Georgia and been third string, maybe even fourth when you look at the competition for QB2 between Ryan Puglisi and his name just escaped my mind.
Ryan Montgomery and Ryan Puglisi kind of competing for that QB2 spot behind Gunnar Stockton. Jared Curtis, a 5-star quarterback, would have gone to Georgia and had to sit for at least a year behind Gunnar Stockton, maybe even 2 if Puglisi or Montgomery can take those next steps. Well, he goes to Vanderbilt for an ungodly amount of NIL money, and he's handed the starting quarterback position immediately. He gets to Vanderbilt, and it is, hey, thank you so much. Here you go.
here's your starting quarterback job that we promised you on the recruiting trail. And that Vanderbilt delivered on that promise, or at least is expected to deliver on that promise with Jared Curtis. Same thing on defense, right? If Justice Terry, who was down between Georgia and Texas, if he goes to Georgia last season, he's a phenomenal player. Don't get me wrong. But does he get the run that he got maybe that he did at Texas? And Texas is another program that we look at and say, yeah, they're one of the teams that can stockpile talent with the NIL and the transfer portal. But does he get the type of run at Georgia that maybe he did at Texas? Would he get that type of run at Georgia this season as a sophomore that he's going to get at Texas, even though he's not projected to be a starter? He's projected to be kind of that first defensive lineman off the bench for the Longhorns.
I think he would have had a better chance to start this season at Georgia than at Texas.
That's fair.
Just based on
fair.
Like the help that Georgia needs at D-line.
What Georgia lost and losing a guy like Christian Miller, not the Alabama linebacker, the Georgia defensive lineman who just got taken by the Saints. It's a big deal when you lose a guy like that, even in the second and third rounds of the draft and things like that there. So looking at it, it feels like the talent of the Big Ten at the top is better, but in the SEC, it's deeper. Now, what does that mean for the physicality of the game, right? Everybody plays 12 football games. Everybody plays 12 regular season games, barring, COVID or forfeitures and things like that. So what does it look like from that perspective? We're all playing 12 games. So we'll take a look on it on the other side here because we're talking postseason. So, we're not really talking about Arkansas. We're not talking about Mississippi State. No disrespect to those programs, but they're not in this conversation. We're talking the big dogs of the programs, or the big dogs of the conferences. It's Alabama, it's Georgia, it's Oklahoma, it's Texas, it's Ohio State, it's Oregon, it's Indiana. Can Michigan work their way back into that conversation? Maybe. We don't know yet. But in terms of rest, I think we're making a little bit too big of a deal in terms of the amount of rest everybody's getting. And we'll talk about it and explain it on the other side here on Tide 100.9 and 1230 AM WTBC. You are listening to the Deep South College Football Show on the Tide 100.9 Facebook page, the Deep South College Football YouTube channel, as well as at FultonW_ on the X account. We'll be right back after these quick commercial break.
Barry Moore. I rolled up my sleeves in Congress, and I'll keep fighting for Alabama in the U.S. Senate. I'm Barry Moore, a conservative fighter, and I approve this message.
Approved and paid for by Barry Moore for U.S. Senate. Tide 100.9 Tuscaloosa weather.
Here's your Tuscaloosa and West Alabama forecast this afternoon. Cloudy, comfortably warm at 81, a gentle north breeze at about 10 miles per hour. Staying cloudy and cool tonight. We drop back to 57. Keep the sunglasses handy for tomorrow. Bright sunshine. We'll see Tuesday and Wednesday's highs in the mid-80s. Fine weather expected through the rest of the week. This is meteorologist Richard DeWetting at the Weather Channel for Town Square Media, Tuscaloosa.
It's 79 degrees in Tuscaloosa.
Follow Tide 100.9 on Facebook today to watch our live shows, read the great articles, and interact with Bama fans today.
We're talking about scheduling here in the world of college football as it became a topic of conversation over the weekend. Who's got the tougher schedule, and does it really matter in the grand scheme of things versus the SEC or the Big Ten, right? And I see arguments for both sides, right? Because if you come out and you play, Western Kentucky and Indiana State and Mercer for your non-conference schedules, and then your first meaningful game is Georgia, Ole Miss, LSU, right? Suddenly you feel like there's a lack of preparedness, right? Now, you may have been able to work out some kinks and things like that, but you don't know how your team's going to respond in these marquee games and these marquee matchups because of the fact that they didn't play any prior to getting to that matchup, right? It doesn't mean they can't succeed. Doesn't mean they won't succeed. It just means that we don't know what that level of competition, how they stack up in the level of competition until you play premier opponents, until you play those premier games. So I see it from that perspective, right, where you want to know what you've got early in the season. And plus, if you play a premier opponent in the non-conference, right, Nick Saban and Alabama used to do it a ton where they go play ranked USC, ranked Wisconsin, number 3 Florida State, right, Virginia Tech, Clemson, Michigan. You go play premier opponents to start the year because they're dealing with the same stuff you are. Do you have a new quarterback? What's the rotations look like? How can we fit our best 11 on the field at all times? They're dealing with the same stuff that you are. So we don't really know what everybody is at that point. It's kind of all right, here's what we've got type of game. And then after that, you play your cupcakes, right? So Alabama loved to, under Nick Saban, go play premier neutral site, marquee non-conference opponent, cupcake game, maybe another cupcake game, and then you're into SEC play with, Ole Miss. They always seem to open with Ole Miss in the mid-2010s scheduling there. In 14 and 15, opening with Ole Miss in conference play there. So from that perspective, I get it. You want to see what your team is. You want to see what you've got. You want to see how good you are early in the year, and then make critiques as you play some of those lighter opponents before you get into the meat of the schedule. I also see it from the other side of, hey, I want to play a bunch of cupcakes because that allows me to figure out who my best 11 are, how I get my best 11 on the field at all times. And once I know that, once I've worked through the kinks of my roster, now I can go blow the doors off of everybody and then pull my best players and keep them healthy until we get to these marquee games, until I get to a Georgia or an Ole Miss. And I'm only using Georgia and Ole Miss because that's who Alabama's opened conference play with in most recent history. 2010s, it seemed to always be Ole Miss, and then the past couple of years, it's always been that matchup with the Georgia Bulldogs there. First time in Tuscaloosa, second time in Athens last season. So I see it from both perspectives. But when we get into the postseason, right, you're playing this tough physical grind of a schedule, and the Big Ten does play some marquee games, right? Oregon plays Ohio State plays Indiana, Michigan plays Indiana as well. Penn State's always a really physical game, right? Iowa, I know we don't talk about the Iowa offense as something prolific, but there's a reason Iowa keeps putting offensive linemen and defensive linemen in the NFL. They get physical. They cause headaches for some of these premier teams. And if Iowa could ever figure out an offense, pair that up with their, top 10 defense, when the defense is playing more snaps than any other Division I team in college football, Iowa could be dangerous. But Iowa could be dangerous. Iowa is not dangerous, right? And so you look at it, when you get to the postseason, and this is a big topic of conversation because Kirby Smart mentioned it after the SEC championship. Hey, that was the 9th SEC game that Alabama and Georgia played. Jackson, who was out or got injured during that game for Georgia? C.J. Allen? Colby Young? Drew Bobo was out?
Noah Thomas. Nate Frazier.
C.J. Allen went out during the game. Raylan Wilson came in banged up.
Yep.
K.J. Bolden wasn't 100% healthy. You look at it from Alabama's perspective. Parker Brailsford, Jeremy Bernard, both dealing with lower body injuries. No Josh Cuevas, no Jam Miller. I mean, 4 starters on offense for Alabama were, at minimum, playing at about 70%. And you were missing 2 of them. By the way, Ty Simpson was also injured at that point. Ryan Coleman-Williams wasn't 100% healthy. Daniel Hill was still coming off a nagging injury. Kevin Riley was out. Defensively for Alabama, Deontay Lawson was banged up. Justin Jefferson was banged up. Brian Hubbard banged up. Xavier Brown dealing with something that ended up limiting him through spring practice. But then you look at the flip side of things here. Alabama still had 2 weeks prior to that first playoff game. They played in the SEC championship, lost the SEC championship, which means that they played on that first Saturday in December. 2 weeks later, they were on the road in Norman, Oklahoma for a playoff game. Alabama goes out and wins that game, right? Georgia was incredibly banged up in that SEC championship. Jackson, do you know how many days it was between the SEC championship and Georgia's first playoff game on New Year's Day?
It was like, 27?
27 days. You know how many days Ole Miss had between the end of the regular season and their first playoff game against Tulane?
8.
22. Ole Miss had 22 days off from the end of the regular season, their final game against Mississippi State, to the matchup against Tulane. Now, they were playing Tulane, which means that they got to pull some guys a little earlier in that game. Trinidad didn't play too terribly much in that game. Neither did Kewan Lacey, but still, they had to go out and play a game. Their depth took a attrition hit because their depth had to play a lot of reps against Tulane, and then they go out and play Georgia. So when you look at it from a postseason perspective, everybody's still getting about the same amount of rest, right? Oklahoma got an extra week because they didn't play in the SEC championship, but it didn't matter for the Sooners, right? Miami and Texas A&M got the same amount of rest because neither of them played in the SEC championship. Actually, I think Texas A&M got an extra day because they played on Friday night, whereas Miami played on that Saturday against Pitt. So same amount of rest for both these teams. Same thing for, Indiana. They won the Big Ten championship. They played in it, and therefore they got the bye. And it was, 28 days, 27 days until their matchup with Alabama in the Rose Bowl. Same thing with Ohio State. They played, they lost, they still got a bye because of the way the seeding was working last season. They still had 28 days between their matchup with Indiana and their matchup with Miami. So in the grand scheme of things, Jackson, does this overly matter that the SEC might be playing a little bit tougher opponents in the regular season when on the back end of everything, we're all still getting the same amount of rest? We're all still getting more than, 20 days if you get a bye. And if you don't get a bye, you're still getting 14 days, 2 weeks, whatever. If you're not playing in your conference championship, you do get about 21 days off between the end of the regular season and the first round of the college football playoff. So really and truly, does it matter in the grand scheme of things when at the end of the day, everybody's getting 2 weeks to a month off?
I think the schedule part still matters, but I would say that in this case, it's more so the bye and the time off that is the hindrance rather than it is the schedule. Because, Ole Miss got the fortune to be able to play Tulane and, get back in a rhythm before going into the Sugar Bowl, whereas Georgia just was coming off nothing. So they had 27, basically a full month off.
Right. At that point, you're basically starting a new season, right, getting that full month off.
Exactly. And so that's where, your first quarter is sluggish, you're slow, you're still figuring things out, getting back into rhythm, and then by the fourth quarter, you're probably more tired than you were in the fourth quarter during the regular season. So I would say it's more so the bye and the time off rather than the schedule. So a big proponent of college football is, hey, we've got to decrease some of this time off, right? We mentioned Indiana. They played on December 6th. They didn't play again until January 1st. So effectively, they did get a full month off. Same thing with Georgia. Same thing with Ohio State. Same thing with Texas Tech. They got a full month off, and then they had to go back out and play. Now, I don't know that the month off versus having 2 weeks versus a month, I don't know if that would have helped Texas Tech. They were just outclassed, out-physicaled, outmatched by Oregon just 110%. But for a team like Georgia, who did start that Sugar Bowl pretty sluggish, for a team like Ohio State, who was in a one-score game against Miami as their offensive coordinator was dealing with a head coaching transition, would it have made a difference had they gotten 2 weeks instead of that full month for a team like Georgia or Ohio State? Would that have changed the outcome of those games? I think it's highly likely. Because, you get, in the regular season, you get basically 2 weeks when you have a bye week in between, say, a big game and a little game. You get that bye week, and we see teams, still in seasonal form. So I would say, yeah, it does.
So it sounds like, so we need to decrease the amount of time that everybody's getting off here.
Absolutely. And I think everybody has said that. I think, I was a proponent.
Yeah, it's a very large talking point. It's like, we need to decrease this time. The championship game is not going to be played until January 25th next year.
Right.
That's way too much time when the regular season ended literally 2 months earlier. Now the NFL's got a playoff system that works pretty well if everybody wants to transition college more like the NFL, which seems to be the way that the people in charge are taking this thing.
They give at most a week off.
Right, yeah. If you get a bye, you get a week off. Most of the time, and only 2 teams get a bye. So why are we doing this? You get 2 weeks off, and then you get more, even if you're, a playoff. Even if you get a bye, you're sitting at a month off at this point.
Right. You're not being... if you're a top 4 seed, you're not being rewarded at all with that time off. You are.
It almost feels like you're getting punished.
Right. You are to a degree because, you can get healthy and maybe strategize a little better and come up with good game plans. But that goes all out the window once you step on the field and your team is sluggish and you're not in your seasonal form.
Yeah.
That's what you want to see when you're watching playoff games. You want to see
I want to see the best teams on the field.
Right. And you're taking away from that by them sitting out.
Because realistically, like, I want to see the best teams on the field. So, Miami versus Texas A&M, right? They get 2 weeks off. Both of them did. But let's take it a step further. Miami and Ohio State. That was a very good ball game. I thoroughly enjoyed watching Miami and Ohio State. But realistically speaking, because two teams are playing and you always have to have a winner, that's the final game you're going to see for one of those two teams. And now we know it was Ohio State, but I don't want to spend a quarter of my final game watching this team, whoever it is, if it's Alabama, if it's Georgia, if it's Ohio State, if it's Miami, if it's Indiana, I don't care who it is. I want to see the best teams on the field consistently. I don't want to spend 25% of my time watching the best team try and wake up. I don't want to see that, because the other team, rest versus rust, that whole conversation, that whole argument there, I don't want to spend 25% of my time watching the final game of the season for a team, watching this team try to wake up, watching them try to figure out, okay, crap, now I got to put forth the extra effort. I forgot what it takes to run this route as crisp as I need to. Not saying that, these guys don't remember these things, but it's different. Game speed and practice speed are two very different things, especially that late in the season. You're not allowed to go full pad, so you're not doing everything at 100% throughout that month. And now you got to come out and you got to flip that switch and get back to that 100% level of consistency. Oh, by the way, the team that you're playing has been able to do that. The team that you're playing has been going 100%. They went 100% 10 days ago when they had to go play in the first round of the college football playoffs. So our guy JT here, he says he thinks the SEC will have the top teams to beat this season. I think it's a fair assessment. When you look at talent composite versus talent composite, I think the SEC's got some of the best talent out there, at least the deepest talent, and that was reflected in the NFL draft. But at the same time, again, it feels like the top of the Big Ten. So you take the top three in each conference: Ohio State, Oregon, Indiana. I feel like it's pretty safe to say that's the top three in the Big Ten. Who are the top three in the SEC? Texas, Georgia. Who's that third? That third spot feels kind of wide open right now.
I think it's one of three teams: Alabama, A&M, or LSU, or Ole Miss. I guess four.
I think you've got four teams up for grabs in that final spot there. Is it Alabama, who we know what Alabama's got to do? They got to replace 90% of their offensive production from a season ago. Texas A&M, can Marcel Reed take that next step and be that premier passer?
You could even throw Oklahoma in that mix.
Oklahoma, returning John Mateer, returning both their coordinators, returning, a lot of good talent in that running back room, made the change at running back coach. We talked with our guy Jay of Locked On Sooners and Unfair Sports. Jackson, do you know who Oklahoma's running backs coach was last year?
I do not.
This is deep in the back. DeMarco Murray.
Oh, really?
Oklahoma's run game wasn't what it needed to be. They go and make a coaching change at running back coach. Do you know who they replaced DeMarco Murray with? The guy from Notre Dame who recruited Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price. So you feel like Oklahoma's run game is going to take a step forward in the right direction this season.
What do you think?
You would assume. Oklahoma's like Alabama last year, right? The run game can only get better because it was at rock bottom a season ago for both these teams. Not just talking about Alabama or Oklahoma here. It was rock bottom for both of them last year. So now, can they get better? And if Alabama and Oklahoma do both take that next step in the run game and along the offensive line, I find it very easy to put 10 wins on either team's schedule. Obviously, not everybody's going to go 10-2, but we know Oklahoma's defense is going to be really good. Taylor Wine back, Kip Lewis back, a lot of those stars, the Bowen brothers are back, so we know the defense is fine. We assume John Mateer is going to be okay because of what he was pre-thumb and knee injury last season. Wide receivers a little bit of a question point for Oklahoma. But if that offensive line and that run game takes that step that we now expect them to take, same thing with Alabama, it's very easy to put 10 wins on their schedules. It's very easy right now to put 10 or 11 wins on Georgia and Texas. Well, now we got 4 10-2 SEC teams and haven't even talked about Ole Miss, A&M, or LSU yet.
Right, and we said the same thing going into last season. There can't be that many 10-2 teams, and then we come to the end of the season and there were, 6?
You had
Vanderbilt.
Yeah, Vanderbilt, Georgia, Alabama, Oklahoma, Ole Miss, Texas sitting just on the outside at 9-3. So we look up last season, we got 5 teams at 10-2 or better. and one team sitting at 9-3. By the way, Ole Miss was about that close away from also going 9-3 last season. Missouri, not Ole Miss. Missouri was about that close away from going 9-3 last season as well. If they could have completed a forward pass when Bo Perbula was out, they probably do go 10-2 or 9-3. So the SEC is going to have a lot of top talent here. I expect it to be a very deep conference yet again. Whereas you look at the Big Ten, all right, Ohio State, check. Oregon, check. Indiana, check. Who's after that? Do we trust Rocco Becht at Penn State to kind of Rocco Becht and Matt Campbell at Penn State to kind of resurge that program into what it needs to be?
I mean, I
think they can be very good. I think they're going to be very good this year. Can Kyle Whittingham unlock what Bryce Underwood should be at Michigan and propel the Wolverines back into the national spotlight?
I mean, they got to take care of Oklahoma first.
They do. They got to face Oklahoma in the regular season here. So coming back on the other side, there was a massive bit of breaking news this morning here surrounding Missouri football. We'll talk about Ahmad Hardy and what happened with him last night here on Tide 100.9 and 1230 AM WTBC, your home for Alabama Crimson Tide sports on the Deep South College Football Show, your home for the SEC.
That's right. Free at ZipRecruiter.com/radio. That's ZipRecruiter.com/radio. ZipRecruiter.com/radio.
ZipRecruiter. Find Tide on Twitter at Tide109 to keep up with show announcements, guests, and our reporters in the field.
Welcome back into Tide 100.9. If you missed the news this morning here, breaking news out of Columbia, Missouri. Missouri running back Ahmad Hardy was a victim of a gunshot wound. He was shot at a concert in Laurel, Mississippi last night, or I guess this morning. No, it was last night that this took place here. The University of Missouri has released a statement here. We'll go ahead and share that here on the screen. Or at least we'll try to. Sorry, I'm running with a new computer for the first time in forever. Shout out my family who helped me get this computer. That's awesome. So we may not have the best ability to share this right now. Let's see. Here we go. Missouri football student athlete Ahmad Hardy was the victim of a shooting at a concert in Mississippi early Sunday morning and sustained a gunshot wound. Ahmad underwent surgery Sunday in Mississippi and is in stable condition. He is deeply loved by his teammates, coaches, friends, family, and fans. We will continue to stand beside him and his family throughout this difficult time, offering our love, prayer, strength, and support. A timeline for his return to football activities is unknown at this time. Mizzou Athletics will provide more information on his status when it becomes available. Number one, glad to see he's in stable condition. Obviously, gunshot wounds are very, very serious. That's a very serious something that happened to Ahmad Hardy there. No indication of when he'll return to football, but I'm glad he's back and stable. All this goes to say, though, nothing good happens after midnight. Really and truly nothing good really happens after 10 p.m., but nothing good especially happens after midnight. I understand he was at a concert, but even still, Ahmad Hardy return to football is unknown, and that's going to kind of take a back seat here, right? The football side of things is going to take a back seat when you look at what happened with Ahmad Hardy here. Jackson, I'm just glad he's okay because that's a young man, that's a family, that's a son, that's a brother, that maybe even a father, if he's not already, he will be one day, I assume, that was put in a very scary situation here when you look at getting shot, basically, or getting shot after a concert there. So glad to see that he is stable. His return to football is currently unknown. ESPN's Pete Thamel has kind of been all over this. I think On 3 was the one that broke the story. However, Pete Thamel's been all over it here. Okay, On 3 just reported a couple of minutes ago at 1:41 Central Time, so 2 minutes ago, On 3 reporting that Ahmad Hardy sustained a gunshot wound to his left leg and has undergone successful surgery in Mississippi. So obviously, again, from a football perspective, a running back getting shot in the leg, that's a pretty damn big deal when you look at Ahmad Hardy there for the Missouri Tigers. And again, one of the top running backs in the SEC. I hope he comes back. Selfishly, I hope he comes back because he was the best running back in football last season. He is the incoming best running back in football this season. So, I mean, to watch a guy like Ahmad Hardy play ball, it's a very special thing. And so the fact that this incident has happened, Ahmad Hardy is stable. Praise God that he is stable, but very scary situation coming out of Columbia, Missouri. And now diving back into the football side of things here, where does Missouri go from here? From a purely football perspective, taking out the fact that, he's stable, thank God. But now from a football standpoint, if he can't go for Missouri to start this season, that's a massive, massive loss for the Missouri Tigers when you look at their upcoming football schedule here. Looking at the football schedule here for the Missouri Tigers here. Early in the season, it's not the biggest test. You do start the year with Arkansas Pine Bluff, so okay, but that week 2 game is the matchup with Kansas. And you're at Kansas this go around here with the Missouri Tigers football schedule. Troy, and then you roll into the SEC schedule. Assuming it's not, a big deal. Again, gunshot wounds are big deals. We do acknowledge that here on the program, but assuming it's not something that's going to keep him out for the entirety of the season, when does he return? And can Missouri sustain without Ahmad Hardy? Because, again, leading rusher in the SEC last season, I thought was the best running back in the SEC. Candidate for the Doak Walker Award for best running back in college football this upcoming season here. If he was able to declare last year, I think he'd have been RB1 in the NFL, or maybe not RB1, because Jeremiah Love was damn good. But pushing for RB1, probably at least bare minimum would have been a consensus RB2. This is kind of a big deal for Ahmad Hardy when you look at his future in football.
Yes, but I would, share the same sentiment as you for this situation. But I would also say we have seen, a running back of his stature, go through a similar situation in Brian Robinson and then come back and be, a monster. So
really no drop off for B-Rob.
Right. And so I would say maybe not week 1, but I would say, we're still pretty far out from the season. So I would expect him to be, if and when he's ready, I would say most likely the Kansas game.
Yeah, if he's, again, there's still a lot. Number one, if you are shot, that's a big deal, obviously. It was not to vital organs. Right. In the chest and stomach and head area. There's still a lot of vital arteries, arteries, muscles, things like that in the leg too. I mean, if he's shot in the thigh, well, that's a big deal for a running back. Whereas, if he's nicked in the leg, maybe it's not as quite a big a deal, grazes the calf. But it seems like, they're saying he underwent surgery. They're saying he's in stable condition. I have a hard time believing that this was just stray bullet that caught him, on the side of the leg. This feels like somebody probably targeted Ahmad Hardy, and he was shot in somewhere that was vital enough that they said, all right, we got to get this guy into surgery now. And thankfully surgery was successful yesterday afternoon.
Right. And, it's a tough situation for Missouri football, but I think, Drink does a good job with that offense. And so I would say, I don't know if they'll, still be at the caliber offensively that they would like to be, but they should be okay for the first, few games going ahead of SEC play.
We'll wrap up the loose ends and get you ready on the radio side for the game with Ryan Fowler here on Tide 100.9 and 1230 AM WTBC, your home for Alabama Crimson Tide sports.
West Alabama real-time news update from the Tuscaloosa Thread newsroom.
A young man has been charged with first-degree assault after he allegedly shot a woman in the head while recklessly playing with a gun in Buell this weekend. The victim is fighting for her life. Gasoline analysts are cautioning drivers that fuel prices are not likely to fall significantly before the end of 2026, and perhaps not until the first quarter of 2027. And police are still searching for Karen Hollis, a 23-year-old missing from Northport who was last seen on Friday. For the details on these stories and more free coverage of local news, get connected at TuscaloosaThread.com.
Coming up on The Game with Ryan Fowler.
Coming up on the Monday edition of The Game, we'll talk to Josh from College Football Nerds. We'll have a chance to visit with Drew DeArmond. We'll talk to Mark Houston as we'll recap another busy weekend on the University of Alabama campus and set the stage for another busy week here on the show. Starting at 2 p.m. on The Game with Ryan Fowler on Tide 100.9, 1230 WTBC, your home of Alabama Crimson Tide sports.
The longest running sports talk show in Tuscaloosa. The Game with Ryan Fowler. Weekdays.
36829. That's 800-923-6829. What do you have to lose? Call 800-923-6829. Again, 800-923-6829.
Tide 100.9 Tuscaloosa weather.
Here's your Tuscaloosa and West Alabama forecast. This afternoon, cloudy. Comfortably warm at 81, a gentle north breeze at about 10 miles per hour. Staying cloudy and cool tonight. We drop back to 57. Keep the sunglasses handy for tomorrow. Bright sunshine. We'll see Tuesday and Wednesday's highs in the mid-80s. Fine weather expected through the rest of the week. This is meteorologist Richard Wedding at the Weather Channel for Town Square Media, Tuscaloosa.
It's 79 degrees in Tuscaloosa.
Alabama Crimson Tide lives right here.
Down to the pylon. Touchdown, Alabama.
On Tide 100.9.
Talked a lot about scheduling in the first half of the program here, so we'll finish out with a little bit more scheduling news. A little bit different, though, than what we were talking about here, as USC and Notre Dame, according to On3 Sports, is in active discussions to renew or, I guess, resume their rivalry series. So for those that don't know, Notre Dame, USC, they obviously play every single season in a much heated rivalry game. Very, very fun rivalry game to get to watch between the Trojans and the Fighting Irish there. As you look at it, it's one of the premier rivalries across the sport when you look at the whole of college football in general, right? And so I believe this season is the final season that series would be played, barring some sort of future negotiated contract. Now, USC, Notre Dame, two of the most historic programs in college football. I don't care what you say about either program, how you feel about either program. They both deserve to be at least in the blue blood conversation. When you look at some of the top programs across the sport, Notre Dame a little bit more historic, but USC, trying to return to the national stage under head coach Lincoln Riley down there in Los Angeles there. Jackson, this is nothing but good for the sport. As long as these two teams can continue playing, this is nothing but beneficial for the sport of college football because it's one of those marquee rivalry games. We talk so much about conference expansion, different scheduling agreements and things like that we are losing some of these key rivalry games, right? When Texas A&M came to the SEC, we lost the battle between Texas A&M and Texas, the Lone Star Showdown. We lost that, right? We've lost the backyard brawl. When Pitt and West Virginia split conferences, West Virginia to the Big 12, Pitt to the ACC. We lost the matchup between Kansas and Missouri there when you look at Missouri split from the Big 12 to the SEC. And so now we've been able to maintain some of these. And so, again, Red River Shootout, we've got that when Texas and Oklahoma came to the conference. When Texas and Oklahoma joined the SEC, we reignited that Lone Star Showdown. And Jackson, I feel like I'm not the only one I'm not the only one believing this when I say that's been incredible the last 2 years between Texas and Texas A&M, getting that heated rivalry back between those two premier schools in the SEC, in the Big 12 at the time as well. It's a lot of fun to get these rivalry games back. So the fact that USC and Notre Dame are in active negotiations, I guess, Heather Dinich reported that, I believe it was Heather Dinich, it may have been Nicole Arbuck, so I do apologize if I got the reporter wrong there, but they reported that these conversations didn't necessarily stop ever. They just kind of slowed down a little bit. So now they've reignited these conversations here to keep USC and Notre Dame. Jackson, where does it rank for you, I guess, all time in terms of rivalry games? Iron Bowl's obviously up top.
Yeah.
The Game.
Yeah.
Red River.
Yeah.
Who sits in that fourth spot? Is it USC, Notre Dame, two of the most premier schools historically in this not in this conference, in this sport?
Not really. I mean, in my time watching college football, it's never really been like one of the biggest rivalry games to watch. And I think Notre Dame needs this game more than USC does. So that's why I think they're pushing for it harder. But I would also say Oklahoma State, Bedlam. That's been a big one I've always loved to watch. Auburn and Georgia, even though that's not like on rivalry weekend, it's still the oldest rivalry in the sport.
I would say the Deep South's oldest rivalry.
Yeah. Like
clean old-fashioned hate.
Georgia, Texas.
The world's largest outdoor cocktail party, Georgia, Florida.
That's another one. I would say Alabama, LSU, Alabama, Tennessee. Those are two big ones.
Third Saturday in October, yeah.
South Carolina, Clemson. That's always a good one I like to watch.
Palmetto Bowl's always fun.
But
there's some of these teams that have quasi-rivalries that don't play near as often as they do their annual opponents, but they're still really fun. Like Georgia, Clemson. That's always a really fun matchup.
They used to play all the time to open the season, and now they kind of have gone their separate ways, which I wish they would just play it every year. But
Georgia's got bigger fish to fry, and Clemson's trying to not die as a program.
Exactly. But I would also throw in probably, I mean, you mentioned it, the Backyard Brawl. That's a big one. The Apple Bowl.
Apple Cup, yep. Washington State. That's always really fun.
And then the Egg Bowl. I mean,
can't go wrong with a good Egg Bowl. No. Can't go wrong with a good Egg Bowl, especially when Lane Kiffin was there. There were always fireworks between Ole Miss and Mississippi State there. I've got a really underrated one here. Battle for the boot between Arkansas and LSU. Arkansas's not been anything the last couple of years, but that always has been a really fun rivalry series to kind of keep track of when Arkansas was good in the early 2020s, and good is a relative term, but it was always a fun matchup there. So